Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone and welcome to the 14th session of Atmabodha. So I'm really happy to see all the interest and enthusiasm to study this very elevating, abstract text of Advaita Vedanta. And I'm happy to see the Q&A I'm getting also, the questions which I'm getting for the Q&A session. So today we are going to study an idea which is a recurring, you can say, theme in the Vedanta. The fact of everything being consciousness in different forms. You will find such statements recurring in the Upanishads. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. Everything is verily Brahman. Mrityu samrityu apnoti iha naneva pashyati. He goes from death to death who sees only difference here, who sees only multiplicity here. And there are many such verses, mantras to this effect. Now, what are they trying to tell us? If you actually open your eyes and see the world around you, it's diversity and multiplicity that you find. We find so many objects around us, so many forms, so many names. Everything is all multiplicity. So what unity are they talking about and how do they know it? How is it that everything is consciousness, everything is Brahman? How do you arrive at this? So this is an important idea for us to grasp because this was an experience with the rishis. This is an intuitive experience of unitary consciousness all around. And they have even put it in a very logical form. What is the form of logic in which they have put it? This is important for us to understand. So I will go a little slowly. Please try to grasp this point because it gives you a deep insight into what they are telling us. See, any object which you perceive it in your awareness, isn't it? Apart from our awareness, do we perceive any object? Suppose I was not here. Still, in somebody's awareness, the object is perceived, and that is why you know the object is there. So, in awareness, objects are perceived, and you cannot perceive anything apart from awareness. This point is to be grasped. When you cannot perceive anything apart from awareness, when awareness is a fact, it is inbuilt in the act of perception, you cannot say that anything is bereft of the influence of awareness or is apart from awareness. Now, when two things cannot remain apart from each other, can you call them independent of each other? That is why no object is given an independent status in Vedanta. This is a hard point to digest, but we must get a hold over this idea. There is no object independent of the subject. There is no object independent of awareness. Einstein once said, well, I don't believe that the moon does not exist when I am not looking at it. Of course, it does exist, but in somebody's awareness, it is perceived as the moon. So in awareness, perception takes place. This point is to be grasped. When you are not identified with the body and mind, you see, there is nothing called my awareness and your awareness. So only awareness is required for the perceptive process. And in awareness is the object found. So you can never separate it from awareness. As a result, you cannot say it exists independently. You do not know how it exists or what exists. Only in your awareness it is that particular object. You require two things for perception to take place. One is you require this particular instrumentation. With these five senses, we are perceiving this world of objects. And if I had a sixth sense, Say I was very sensitive to UV radiation or radio waves. I would perceive a totally different world, which means my perception of what I am calling reality depends upon this equipment. It depends on how much I am equipped with. Or I can put it like this, our perception of reality entirely depends on the apparatus we are using. And I can only perceive as much of that reality as my apparatus or equipment will allow me to perceive. So I do not know reality as it is. With these five senses, this is what I see. Look at just the function of our eyes. It is made so as to perceive only that which falls within the visible range of light, electromagnetic radiation. Anything outside that we can't perceive. Does that mean it's not there? There are a whole lot of things which you and me cannot perceive, but they are very much there. So we are geared to perceive within a certain range, and our senses help us perceive as much of reality as they are able to show us, as they are able to give us. And thus our perception is limited. By the very nature of things, it is limited to our equipment, and it is only in your awareness that you perceive. If you are unaware, there can be no perception of any object. Even if you are physically not present, in awareness, in somebody's awareness, it is perceived as an object. So always perception is in awareness. The object is found in awareness. As a result, you cannot consider it to be something separate from the fact of awareness. As a result, it doesn't have an independent status. You see, if something cannot be separated from something else, can you call it independent of that thing? No. Isn't it? Now, there's a book on there are two books on my table. I can call them two independent books only when this book can remain apart from this book and the second book can remain apart from the first book. Then they are two independent books. If they cannot stay apart from each other, will I call them two books? I will call them only one book. In two forms maybe. So also, that is why it is said that every object is nothing but the subject in another form, because it cannot stay independent of subjective awareness. That is why there is nothing completely apart from Brahman. There are no two. There is only one, appearing as two. Advait. Non-dual. See, non-duality, Advaita is the only truth of existence. But we are geared to perceive superimposed truth, which means truth with name and form. But if we scrutinize like this, if we understand the nature of our perceptive process, we will come back to the actual truth of existence. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, first tie the knowledge of Advaita at the corner of your cloth and then do whatever you like. This is the meaning. See reality as it is. You can see reality as it is only when you put your little equipment a bit aside. If you are conditioned to see only as much as your senses will reveal to you, will allow you to see, then you are going to see very little. So that is why understanding these points, we naturally come to the conclusion that, see, what I told you just now is to be repeatedly thought of again and again. Then only it will be possible to understand why the object is considered to be part of the subject in Vedanta. Why is the world considered to be nothing but Brahman and not a separate reality independent of the Atman or Brahman spread out in front of us? It is not considered like that. It is Brahman in another form with another name to which we have given all importance, and that is why we have missed out the underlying truth of consciousness of Brahman. So that is why Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. So this is the logical support to the mystical experience of these rishis, where they actually found one unitary consciousness throbbing in all of creation. The very nature of existence is consciousness. That's why they are just two different words, but they mean the same thing. Pure existence is consciousness. Sat is Chit. So this is the logical format to understand the meaning of everything is Atman, everything is Brahman. And the same idea you also find in the Chandogya Upanishad, in that beautiful story which we discussed briefly once in one of these talks, the story of Shvetaketu. The father of Shvetaketu, Uddalak, he tells his son, do you know that, knowing which you know this entire world, just by as you know this lump of clay, by knowing this one lump of clay, I know everything that the clay is made up of, like a pot, a pan, a ladle, whatever it is made up of. So also there is one substance knowing which you can know everything about this world of manifestation. Do you know that? And then Shvetaketu says, no, I do not know anything about this. Please tell me. And then the father goes into this explanation that there is such a substance. Everything is a manifestation of that, and bound in a name and form. You see, if you take the simple example of a pot, please get this very clear, that there is nothing called a pot apart from clay. It is name and form given to clay that you are calling pot. There is nothing, no identity as such in that word pot. There is nothing called potness apart from clay. It is just name and form given to clay. But in our mind, it has assumed an individuality of its own. So also everything in this universe. Suppose I say I will keep the clay, you keep the pot. You can never do anything like this. Or if I say, is it more pot or is it more clay? Clay can exist without pot, pot can't exist without clay. That is why clay is the reality about the pot. Knowing this, everything, if you go to the causal factor, you will see that everything is an effect of a deeper cause. And if you catch hold of that cause, you get greater truth about the effect. The greater the underlying fact about the cause, about the effect, can be traced in this way. And that is how everything in this universe is. This is the description given in the Upanishads. Just like how ornaments are nothing but gold in a particular form. Wave is nothing but water in a particular form. A pot is nothing but clay in a particular form. So also this universe is nothing but Brahman in different forms and names. Under different guises, the same substance is appearing. There is this beautiful verse in the Kathopanishad. Agniryathaiko bhuvanam pravishto rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva ekas tatha sarva bhutantaratma rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa. Fire can take so many forms. Look at the nature of flames. It can take so many forms, but it's the same fire in different forms. So also he's saying the same Atman takes different forms due to its association with different causal and subtle bodies, different intellects, different minds, and it appears to be different personalities, different individuals. The Atman appears to us in so many forms. But this source of life, consciousness, is the same in everyone. If you put aside the name and form a bit, you will see it is awareness is the actual uniting factor. Awareness is at the heart of existence. Awareness is at the heart of unitary consciousness. And this is to be caught in first-person experience. This is the point. For us to be able to understand this whole thing, this is to be caught in first-person experience. Check and see just now in your own first-person experience, an object is say this book here in front of me, it is outside my skin. Is it outside my awareness? The book you are holding in your hands, it's of course outside your skin. What is inside your skin you consider to be you. What is outside your skin you consider to be an object. The book in your hand is outside your skin, so you are considering it to be an object. But is it outside your awareness? No. In your awareness, it's a book. So Vedantically speaking, it is not a complete object. It is nothing but in some way Brahman appearing to you in the form of a book. Now if I put it like this, without understanding the logic behind it, this may appear a little strange, but this has been the mystic experience of sages, saints, mystics across all cultures. Haven't we heard these statements? God is everything. God is everywhere. He is all that there is. Mystics of all nations have spoken this language because this is the perception of a mind which touches unitary consciousness. That everything is verily Brahman, manifested in so many names and forms. If I'm identified only with this particular body and mind, I will be trapped in those names and forms. If I touch awareness in my own being, I will be able to see Brahman everywhere. This fact will be so natural that indeed everything is in my awareness alone, it is perceptible. So it is not apart from my awareness. So a little disconnection from the mere body-mind complex and a little deep level connection with our true being is all that is required in terms of sadhana for us to understand these great facts about existence. They are uncovering a very profound truth. That is why this is the mind of God. Existence is a wave, as it were, in the mind of God. What we are calling this cosmic existence, which is so vast, so huge, is just like an idea in the mind of God. So we have all these beautiful illustrations like Shvetaketu's story. As soon as the father puts it like this, Shvetaketu is able to absorb this truth and he gets very interested in it. It is indeed one substance revealing itself through in so many manifold ways. And we have in us, we are given the freedom to delude ourselves as much as we wish to be. As much as we wish to be deluded, we can delude ourselves by only thinking in terms of name and form. Go a little beyond that and you will see reality as it is. In fact, the feeling of empathy, kindness, oneness that we feel with creation, the sheer joy of life, is only when awareness comes into full bloom in your mind, so that you are able to see things through the lens of pure awareness and not through the lens of your mind merely, not through the lens of intellect, which differentiates. You are seeing it through the lens of intuition and awareness. Then you will see oneness. So this is what is being reiterated again and again. And this 48th verse is giving us this in a very beautiful form. Please go to verse number 48 of Atmabodha. Atmai Vedam Jagat Sarvam Atmano Anya Na Vidyate Mrudo Yadvad Ghatadini Swatmanam Sarvamikshate. The tangible universe is verily Atman. Nothing whatsoever exists that is other than Atman. As pots and jars are verily clay and cannot be anything but clay, so to the enlightened, all that is perceived is the self. See, this is what we have been discussing. This tangible universe, tangible to your senses, is only Brahman. The seen and the unseen is only Brahman. All appearance is in Brahman. All form and name is superimposed on Brahman. He is all that there is To your senses, it is appearing like this. That is why when we do sadhana, we try to close the senses a bit, isn't it? So that this delusion of name and form stops a bit. In traditional Vedanta, they will tell you, see, there is only Sat, Chit, Ananda and Nam Roop. Only this much. The fact of consciousness and the superimposition with name and form. This is all that there is. You separate the two and you will see the fact of pure existence, whichever is. Brahman is never absent. Our ignorance doesn't allow us to see it. So just put name and form a little aside and you will be able to see it. So this verse and this idea comes again and again in so many Upanishads. When we read it, we must be able to catch the essence of what they are trying to tell us. You can actually get the feel of this through sadhana, through what are called mystic experiences of unitary consciousness. In the lives of all mystics, these have come out. Many times I have told you, I think in the course of these talks, Sri Ramakrishna's experience of this consciousness. He would see only Brahman. Everything else was hazy for him. Once Sri Ramakrishna went to the zoo and just seeing the lion, he went into samadhi. He constantly experienced this state. The least suggestions would awaken this divine consciousness in him. If somebody tore something in front of Sri Ramakrishna, he would go into samadhi. Because he saw unitary consciousness, now there's a kind of division, something like that would strike his mind and he would dive into the truth of existence. If somebody closed an umbrella in his presence, he would go into samadhi. Because it reminded him of the sudden gathering in of the powers of the mind. If somebody stood in the pose of Krishna, it would remind him of divine consciousness which manifested in his fullness in the Krishna avatar, Krishna incarnation, and he would go into samadhi. This was Sri Ramakrishna's state of mind. He hardly needed an excuse to go into samadhi. Because the mind is so deeply soaked, so deeply imbued with Brahman. It is all the time waiting to plunge into that. So these are all the very thrilling experiences you get as you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. What a state of mind. See, whom are we trying to follow and understand? What a tremendous mind. What power constantly the mind is plunging into reality. And with great struggle coming out of it to give us the knowledge of that state. This was Sri Ramakrishna. So the best explanation to all these verses you can get through that life. Let's go to the next verse where they are going to describe the characteristics of a Jeevan Mukta, one who attains this state while living in the body. Jeevan Muktastu tad vidwan purvopadhi gunans tyajet sachidananda rupatvat bhavet brahmara kitavat. A Jeevan Mukta endowed with self-knowledge gives up the traits of his previous upadhis. Because of his realization that he is of the nature of existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, he verily becomes Brahman, like the cockroach becoming a Brahmara insect. So the Jeevan Mukta, by getting rid of his upadhis, he is able to unite his mind constantly with the fact of Sachidananda, the fact of Brahman. So the only, last class also I think we discussed this, the only bondage for the buddhi, for the developed mind is the upadhis. So a Jeevan Mukta, a man of realization, actually shakes them off. Even as a mind in ignorance gathers them, gathers the upadhis. He is just waiting to shake them off. Any trap he will not get into. So all of these upadhis serve as traps because they give us a solid sense of individuality, which is a farce, which is not real. So this verse is directly pointing towards the nature of the mind of the realized man of realization. And then he says, he verily becomes Brahman by meditating on the fact of Brahman. Even as there's a common Indian folklore which says that a cockroach, if it is attacked by a Brahmara is a kind of bee, a huge bee. So when it is attacked by this huge insect, out of fear, by constantly thinking and contemplating on its enemy, it becomes a Brahmara. The cockroach becomes a Brahmara. So this is a myth, but it's used repeatedly just to tell us that by what you repeatedly think of, you will acquire its nature. When you repeatedly think of something, if you think of Brahman, you will become Brahman. This is what they are trying to tell us. And if I really think of my upadhis, I will get more and more bound in them. So by constant meditation on the ideal, one verily touches the ideal, one becomes one with that. This is what is being said. See, here we must understand the value of thought. Many times we don't give enough thought to the power of thought. What you repeatedly think about, that will become your experience. There is no doubt about this. For the simple reason, you have created the space for the experience to happen. You have drawn the experience to you. You will attract the thing to yourself if you repeatedly think about it. And so, beware. If we are repeatedly thinking about our worries and anxieties and our self-created problems because of our compulsive habits of mind, our untrained emotions, then that is what is going to become our experience of life. And if we are continuously thinking of holy things, great ideas, elevating thoughts, then that is going to become our experience of life. Because, as I told you, I have given you a law. Your life does not create your thoughts. Your thoughts create your life. You are mainly a human being, means a functioning mind, an embodied mind. What you think repeatedly will become your experience. Your life should not create your thoughts. Your thoughts will create your life. Knowing this, let us think consciously of all this. Let us make it a habit to constantly dwell upon these great thoughts so that they become our experiences tomorrow. So this is what is meant by constant meditation on the object of, on the ideal, one verily becomes that. Even as the cockroach is converted into the Brahmara insect itself. Now, in the next verse, there is this very beautiful idea of the state of the Jeevan Mukta. Please observe it. Tirtva moharnavam hatva ragadveshadi rakshasan yogi shanti samayukta atma ramo virajate. A yogi who is a Jeevan Mukta, after crossing the ocean of delusion and killing the monsters of passion and aversion, becomes united with peace and dwells in the bliss derived from the realization of the self alone. See, even Shankaracharya is using the language of yoga. The yogi who is a Jeevan Mukta, he says. One who has attained to the state of the Jeevan Mukta through solid practice, spiritual practice. By yoga, I usually mean meditation. I always mean meditation. So one who through the power of meditation has attained to the state of realization while living in this body, who has overcome the effects of passion and aversion. See, these are the monsters in our subconscious which throw up waves of vrittis in our conscious mind. Passion, aversion, strong likes and dislikes, attachments, fears, anger, anxiety, all these. So So when the subconscious is full of all this, what will you expect on the conscious plane of mind? The conscious is just a strip of your mental surface, There's a huge subconscious under that. So if that is boiling with all these kind of emotions, naturally your conscious mind will remain in a state of disturbance. That is why we ask for peace. So this verse says that one who has overcome these elements in the subconscious, these negativities, passion, aversion, all these, is able to get great peace of mind and supreme bliss by continuously dwelling in the truth of awareness, in the nature of his self. Because the knowledge of the self only comes in the clear mind, clear of all this. When you churn the mind, what will you get? All this gets thrown up. Churning the mind is meditation. It begins by fixing the mind on one thought, and then so many thoughts can suddenly come into your mind, overpower your mind. And then as you go on getting established in meditation, you are able to get deep peace. All these thoughts are quelled. You are able to concentrate on your ishtam or whichever thought you have taken as the object of your meditation, and you are able to arrive at self-knowledge gradually. So this has a common illustration in our scriptures, which is called the story of Samudra Manthan. We have the time, so I will tell you the story here. It's very interesting. Many of you might have heard this story, but it's illustrative of the state of our mind. This is what they are describing through a story. So it goes like this. These devas and the asuras, the gods and the demons, are constantly at conflict with each other. And once it so happened that a great sage whose name was Durvas, he was famous for his anger. So he cursed Indra. And as a result, Indra lost in his battle against the asuras, against the demons. And the demons came and occupied the heavens. And the devas the gods had to flee. And then they went to Vishnu and he said, look, why don't you do one thing? Since you are periodically in conflict with these demons and sometimes they overpower you, you must get the ability to become immortal. So then even when they attack you, you won't die. And when you don't die, then you can rule over your heavens and remain safe and you won't have any such problems. Then how do we get immortal? So then there is a nectar of immortality, the Amrita, what is called. So if you are able to get your hand on that, then you will be able to become immortal. There is a nectar of immortality, which you must drink. Now, how to get this nectar of immortality? You have to churn the ocean. There it is described, ocean of milk. It's actually churning your mind. If you churn your mind, many things will come out. One of the things, the ultimate thing will be this nectar of immortality also, because the self is right at the source of your mind. So he says, try to get this nectar. And then how to get this nectar? Now only the strength of the gods is not enough. So they make a pact with the asuras, with the demons. And they decide that they will share whatever they get, and half the nectar will go to the demons. And so together they will churn the ocean of milk, and using the Mandara mountain as the churning rod and the serpent Vasuki as the rope. All this is a story, so all this is there. And then both these groups, the devas on one side and the asuras, the gods and the demons, started churning this ocean, and many things came out. So what are they trying to tell us? See, all the forces of your mind have to be united if you want to get the nectar of immortality, the Amrita. All the good and bad forces, because you have to draw your entire vital energy to unfold awareness. It is invested in your thought process, in your emotions, in a whole lot of things in your mind. All of these, the gods and demons in us. Where are the gods and demons? They are all in us. Our good thoughts are the gods, our evil thoughts are the demons. So the power of all of these has to unite for the churning to take place. You don't practice meditation with a bit of your mind. You have to awaken the entire energy of the mind to be able to effectively meditate. So that is the meaning of the pact between the Devas and the Asuras. The entire mind is going into the state of meditation. So then the churning of the ocean starts. Now, there again, everything is significant about this story, the Mandara mountain, it actually indicates the spine, the place where in the yogic culture, the spine is the axis of the universe, because it's along the spine. You just keep your spine erect and you will understand what they're trying to say. When the spine is erect, you suddenly become alert. The sluggishness in our system just goes when the spine is erect. So the spine somehow is the place, because all the yogic chakras are located along the spine, that has to be maintained in a particular way for yoga to become possible. So the Mandara mountain denotes, in a sense, this axis. And the serpent Vasuki, it denotes the Kundalini, the aroused vital energy in us, which is responsible for the Shat Chakra Bhed, which is responsible for taking you into deeper levels of awareness. So I don't want to exactly go into the yogic idea here, but this story is giving us the entire thing in a very beautiful format. Easily graspable it is. So now using this Vasuki, see the vital energy in your system, the churning starts, and then what happens? A whole lot of things are thrown up from the ocean. First they get all these precious gems, ratnas, pearls, and all precious stones. So many precious things your mind is going to throw out. First, beautiful thoughts, beautiful emotions, bhavs, devotion to God, a very refined, subtle feeling of extreme joy in the presence of the Lord, your revelations, the beautiful emotions you feel at that time for the Lord, all this will come out. And along with this, Mother Lakshmi also came out. Great wealth, the wealth of your mind will just get unfurled. And Uchashravas, the divine horse, a whole lot of things were thrown out. So actually when you sit for meditation, don't you find this? The mind throws out a whole lot of things. And if the mind is well trained, it can throw out things which are very satisfying. And then even halahal came out at some point. Halahal is a poison. So the mind can also throw out poisonous things, isn't it? Our anger and hatred, all that can take so many forms. Simply sitting and brooding. For some people, meditation is a kind of brooding, sitting and brooding over some incident of the past. So even all these things can come out. And what happened to this halahal poison? It seems Lord Shiva came and swallowed up halahal and saved the world. This is how the story goes. And Mother Parvati held his throat when he swallowed the poison so that he doesn't get poisoned. So divine energy and the supreme, Shiva denotes the self, the supreme self. These, with the help of these, you swallow up the poison of your mind. Whatever negativities come out, it is self-knowledge which will help you remove them from your system. And then, finally what happens? The nectar comes out, Dhanvantari comes out with a huge pot of nectar. Now this nectar of immortality is actually, what is immortality? It is nothing but self-knowledge. So they are giving the name of nectar to this knowledge because it makes you immortal. By knowing who you truly are, you transcend your mortality. This identification with this body and mind is transcended. So you indeed, this is real immortality. It is not about drinking something. It is about knowing who you truly are. So this knowledge also is inherent in the depths of your mind. Once the mind is cleared of all these negativities and the halahal is swallowed up, then as the nectar comes out, you will be able to know what it is. You will be able to take it in your hands. But then what happens? The story goes that these devas and asuras started quarreling over the pot of nectar. Because the demons also claim that we have worked for this nectar to come out, it belongs to us. You alone cannot have it. So all the forces of your mind are going to disturb you in acquiring this nectar. And then Lord Vishnu very diplomatically solves the whole problem by taking the form of Mohini, which means he tempted the asuras so as to make sure all the nectar goes only to the gods. So the Vishnu form here in our system, that is the buddhi, the discriminating acute intellect, which will help you understand who should get the nectar and how to make sure that only the positivity of your mind is nourished, to make sure that only the goodness in you is unfolded, and which does not allow the nectar to flow towards the asuras. So this discriminating intellect starts functioning at this point, and the story ends by saying that this Lord Vishnu in this form gave the entire nectar only to the devas. So the gods became immortal and the asuras did not get anything in spite of their effort. Which means what is to be nourished in your mind? All the positivity, the goodness, the divinity inherent in your mind. That is to be nourished with self-knowledge. And then alone you become immortal. Then alone Jeevan Mukti is possible because you have understood your true nature, and this entire system, body-mind complex, has got imbued with that immortality, with that knowledge of the self. So only you will radiate only positivity, only goodness. You will radiate divinity. So this is what the story of Samudra Manthan tells us, that if you churn your mind properly, as it has been told, then the greatest essence of life, immortality, will come to you. You will become immortal in this sense. So that is why in the Puranas all these stories are mentioned. So this is what is being meant here. When he says that the Jeevan Mukta derives the greatest peace and bliss through the realization of the self alone. Now we'll go into the next verse and then take up the questions. So here in number 51, it's connected. Please go to verse number 51. Bahya anitya sukha saktim hitvatma sukha nivritaha ghatastha deepavat swastha swantareva prakashate. Relinquishing attachment to illusory external happiness, the self-abiding Jeevan Mukta, satisfied with the bliss derived from the Atman, shines inwardly like a lamp placed inside a jar. So this beautiful verse, you see how the Jeevan Mukta is able to give up illusory attachment, illusory happiness, and shine in his own nature as a lamp placed in a jar. It reminds me of this Dakshinamurti Stotram. There is a beautiful couplet there, a beautiful stanza which says, Nana Chidra Ghatodara Sthitamaha Deepa Prabhabhaswaram Jnanam Yastadu Chakshurari Karna Dwara Bahispandate Janamiti Tameva Bhantam Anubhati Etat Samastam Jagat Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye. It's a salutation to Dakshinamurti, Shri Dakshinamurti. So what it is saying is, even as if you placed a lamp in a jar with, say, many holes, 1,000 holes, still all the light would stream out of those holes, isn't it? So also the awakened man, the knowledge in his heart streams out through his senses, as it were, and he appears radiant with knowledge. By this knowledge is meant consciousness. And when he says Janamiti, Tameva Bhantam Anubhadeta Samastam Jagat, by the luminosity of his knowledge, he illumines all quarters, this entire world. Really a man of knowledge. He gets the ability to transform minds just like that, just by the power of his convictions. To such who is Dakshinamurti, I bow down. That is the beautiful stanza. So the same thing is being expressed here. The Jeevan Mukta becomes like this. By perpetually reveling in the state of self-knowledge and shaking off all illusory attachments, he is able to radiate this divinity. Even as a lamp placed in a jar radiates light through the holes made in that jar. So it's a very beautiful description of the state of highest knowledge, an illumined mind. You see, they say, a lighted torch can light other torches. So an illumined mind renders everything around it full of light. And this mind can be generated systematically through sadhana, the state of Jeevan Mukti. In this mind, which is well trained in meditation, the insights of Vedanta will just spark off the highest knowledge. The pointers which I have been giving you, the clues of self, they will take you into self-knowledge. See, just observe and see in your everyday life, there are so many such clues scattered in your everyday experience. This system, the body, every organ, the hands, the feet, the internal organs, all of them function independent of you. Please see, independent of your will. And we are composed of so many parts, as it were, but we feel we are one whole being, one unitary whole. The heart never takes our permission to beat. The blood never takes our permission to flow. But somehow we feel we are one composite whole. How do we feel this? In our everyday life, these clues are scattered. Everything about the body and mind is constantly changing. But I have a sense of changelessness about the I. How is this? See, just think of yourself when you were a toddler, an infant and then a toddler. How much you have changed. Then you were a teenager and then a young person. Today you are this many years. But the same I has persisted. The same I was the infant, then the toddler, then the teenager, then the young person. Today I am like this. But body and mind have entirely changed. So what has remained unchanged? How is it that the I is the same? There is something changeless in you in the midst of all this change, isn't it? Suppose your mother showed you a picture of yourself as a baby. You wouldn't recognize it. Your mother would recognize it. That much has the body changed. And the mind constantly changing. But we have a sense of changelessness about I. How does this happen? It is because of the fact of the self. There is an unchanging element in you, ever shining, never absent, ever luminous, beyond all change. You are always that, and that is why this sense of changelessness about us. Although body and mind are constantly changing, the cells of your body are constantly getting renewed, but you feel you are the same person, same being. So all these are clues scattered in our everyday experience to show the fact of our true being, to show that yes, you are changeless, you are immutable, and that you is the Atman, not this body-mind complex. So like this, these verses of the Atmabodha are you can say they are tremendous truths about your true being. And meditation on these verses will give us insights into our real nature. Let us go into the question and answers. We have 10 minutes left. So the first question is, you mentioned about 6 types of sanskars according to yoga psychology in your last class. Could you please let us know the reference material where we can learn more about them? Okay, I put it in a nutshell actually, what we require to know about sanskars in the last class. But if you want to study them in detail, you should go to the Vyas Bhashya on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is I don't know which version is available there in the US, but you find many commentaries on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. If you take up the Vyas Bhashya, it's a huge commentary, you will get a whole lot of wonderful ideas. It's an in-depth study of mind and how to go into self-knowledge through mind, through mental process. So that is what yoga is about. Actually, it is about stopping mind to go into the self. But it will give you exhaustive knowledge about the nature of mind, vrittis, sanskars, our motivations, attitudes, what are they about our emotions, about the nature of the mind, the different strata of the mind, how to overcome, techniques to do all this, meditations, sanyams, all this, it's exhaustive. So I think you should go through these texts. It's an experience in itself. Anyone who has tried to meditate will understand the value of these Yoga Sutras. Just like how in Bhakti, we have Bhakti Sutras. So like in Yoga, we have Yoga Sutras. This is very deep literature, which is of great practical value. See, today all the kinds of classes I am doing, they are all based on these scriptures. Ideas taken from there and developed in the modern idiom for the modern man, according to what we require today. But the source ideas are taken from these scriptures. So there is tremendous knowledge. If we want it, it's there to tap. So you can please refer to this work, Patanjali Yoga Sutras by and Vyas Bhashya on that. Then the next question is, in all your lectures regarding Atmabodha, the primary concern of the book seems to be getting over the identification with body-mind complex as a prerogative to travel towards non-dual truth. My upasana is based on meditation on the form of Sri Ramakrishna. So when I am meditating on the form of Sri Ramakrishna, am I not reinforcing that I am a body and Sri Ramakrishna is also a body and giving more strength to my identification with the body? Could you please point me towards the right direction and tell me what should be my state of mind when I'm doing my upasana? See, this is a very valid question. It's such a sincere question. Will it reinforce my body consciousness if I meditate on just another body? Only thing is, you are not meditating on just another body. When you meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, he had no body consciousness. So you are meditating on a being who is bereft of body consciousness. So your mind will touch his state of mind. That is the beauty of meditating on the physical form of an enlightened being, of an avatar. You will touch his liberated state of mind. But if you meditate on an ordinary body, some other body, you will fall into that trap. Because that mind has not gone beyond that body. That's why take care on what you meditate. If you meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swami Vivekananda, these personalities who are far beyond body consciousness, your mind will go into that state of beyond body consciousness. So it will never reinforce body consciousness in you. This is to be understood only through meditation. So please go ahead and meditate on Sri Ramakrishna. It will never bring body consciousness. In fact, it will liberate you from body and mind, this normal, ordinary mind. It will take you into the state of great divine consciousness. So that is why meditation on what you are meditating becomes very important. Any kind of concentration is not called meditation. Only if it is done on a holy object, a sattvic object, it can it can be called meditation. And if you are meditating on God, the holiest of the holy, then alone it has a liberating effect on your mind. And Sri Ramakrishna himself recommended Sakar Dhyan will take you to Nirakar Dhyan. If you meditate on the form of God, it will take you to the formless reality. So please go ahead and do it. Then, when truth is one, why is the effect of realizing it different in different beings? When I read Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Raman Maharshi, my little understanding of them gives me a feeling that their words are very cooling, soothing, and they are not at all concerned with the outside world. Even in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna tells the Brahmo, who are you to change the world? But on the other hand, when I read Swami Vivekananda, I feel as if he is full of fire, completely contrasting to Sri Ramakrishna and Raman Maharshi. Reading Swamiji feels as if Swamiji is pushing everyone to serve the world and work for the world. How does one understand this apparent contradiction? See, Vivekananda came to arouse the Indian masses and to take them towards divine consciousness. Isn't it? If Sri Ramakrishna is the text, Vivekananda is the commentary on that text. The commentary is required to understand that text. That is why Vivekananda was full of fire. He saw that the masses, the ordinary people were full of tamas. That state of mind which is not going to take you to God consciousness. So he aroused rajas in them. So he aroused the spirit of activity. He tried to do that and then gradually take them into the state of sattva, the state of a balanced mind and a radiant awareness, so that you can attain to these higher levels of meditation, pure consciousness, all this that we are speaking about. That was his work, life's work, and that is why he had to be as he was. While in the lives of Sri Ramakrishna or Raman Maharshi, you see them absorbed in the supreme state of consciousness. Not that Vivekananda was not absorbed. Sri Ramakrishna himself said that Swamiji is a Dhyana Siddha. He is one of the Saptarishis. He is a man of the greatest meditation. His real nature was to remain absorbed, but he was brought into this world for this particular function, to arouse the people to go back to their divine heritage. And that is why he had to, you have to give to a student what the student requires. So he had to give to the masses this fire to awaken the divine consciousness in them. That is why he had to perform this particular task. It's not easy. And so, if you want to understand even Sri Ramakrishna, a very high level of sattva is required. So please go through Vivekananda. This is the common recommendation for everyone. You must try to understand Vivekananda, to understand the state of Sri Ramakrishna. It's a very elevated state. See, I gave you a number of examples even in the course of this talk of the state of mind of Sri Ramakrishna. Who but a Sri Ramakrishna can understand Sri Ramakrishna? Tell me. That kind of a mind which is constantly in touch with the supreme truth. Sri Ramakrishna used to ask for something like water or a piece of sweet meat in order to come out of samadhi, because the nature of his mind was to constantly go into that state. This had become so much a habit with him that he would deliberately cling to one particular desire, like a glass of water, in order to come out of that state and to be able to maintain the normal consciousness. Otherwise, he would constantly plunge into the supernatural state, superconscious state. So this is no ordinary mind. How will we know this mind? Unless we touch at least the peak of sattva in us. That is why all of this is required. Only thing we have to understand is to understand everything properly, in perspective, in proportion. And the mind of Holy Mother Swami Turiyananji Maharaj used to say, mother's mind never comes down below the Vishuddha Chakra, which is a very elevated state of mind. She lives in the state of supreme awareness. She lives in that realm, but she acts like an ordinary woman so that it will be possible for us to approach her. Her mind never descends below the Vishuddha Chakra, he used to say. So, to understand the elevated state of these minds, it is important for us to bring about something of this in our own system. And that is what Vivekananda signifies. His coming, his advent was for this. You see, he gives us the 4 yogas, step-by-step processes to go towards this supreme knowledge. And we require teachers like these because we are like little children. We need to be led by the hand to go towards this supreme truth. And these teachers function like this, that is why. Vivekananda is required to understand Sri Ramakrishna. So don't think that they are different and Vivekananda is different. It is not so. Vivekananda is the make of Sri Ramakrishna only. Sugandha Sri Guru Bhavan Vayu Khalu, we say here. Which means if Sri Ramakrishna is the fragrance, Vivekananda was that wind which spread that fragrance. Because if there is fragrance at a place but no wind, how will it spread? And that is why Vivekananda appears like the cyclonic monk who spread the message of Sri Ramakrishna. So please try to understand it like this. You must read the exhaustive, detailed life of Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples, that book, and you will understand what Vivekananda was. So let me leave you with this today. Time is up. We will end with a prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhaga Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.